Steve has had a lot on his plate. With his health issues, he has been striking out a lot.
Baseball pens.
He was not sure how he was going to wind up. His wife Heather thinks he is a great catch, so she's decided to go to bat for him. Now Steve will be a rookie recipient in Vanderbilt Transplant.
I found out today while I was at work that I'm a mess. And you could be getting it to me by the end of this month. We're matched.
Saving my life.
Yeah, we're matched.
Get ready to crush it. Crush it.
Yeah.
This is the Crush It Podcast with Matt and Mason.
All right, welcome back to the Crush It Podcast. I am your co-host.
There we go. You got it right this time.
Mason Burchett here with my co-host. That still feels weird, Matt Davis.
You're actually supposed to just introduce yourself and then call me your co-host.
We're both hosts, but like it's not a stab at you for me to say that I'm the host and you're my co-host.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. Now that we've established dominance,
Again,
I'm doing good. I think you were about to ask how I was doing, and I'm doing good. I appreciate it,
Yeah.
Mason. So we want to jump in. We're not going to waste any time running our mouths
we got a lot
because
we
we are
20
super
years to cover
excited.
here.
We are super excited about our guest on the podcast this evening. And I'm going to give a real quick version of how I met. We have Steve and Heather Winfree with us from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Welcome.
Knoxville. And so the way I met Steve and Heather, we had just moved into a new house in a subdivision. And you see your neighbors, you're in a subdivision. When you move in, you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna be friends with all the neighbors. This is gonna be great, but you never know how to really get that started. It's always who's gonna go first.
I didn't introduce myself to my neighbors in the last subdivision I lived in until literally I was packing the U-Haul to move out.
Like, oh, by the way,
we're the Burchetts.
Bye, we're out. So we had probably been there just a few days. We hadn't been there long, and I was out in the driveway. And Steve came walking across the road and introduced himself.
Better neighbor than me.
And yes, much better neighbor. Or me, to be honest with you, because he came across the road, not me. And he introduced himself. Said, Heather wasn't home at the time, but he talked about her, and we introduced ourselves. And he said, just wanted to come across the road and let you know your house is famous. And I was like, well, I mean, I'm pretty happy with it, but thank you. So he then proceeds to tell me that it was in the background of a video that went viral. And then my mind starts kind of clicking. And as he's starting to tell the story, I start remembering that. I'm like, wait a second. I've seen this video. So from that point, I start asking questions. And, to be honest with you, he went back across the road. I went in, pulled up the video again, was showing Grace, and everybody like, they're right there. That's them. This is them. And so a little bit starstruck, to be honest with you. Well, what is amazing about it is that very quickly, a very real friendship developed, and a lot of, to be honest with you, I cannot tell you. We lived there, I guess, about 15 months. It was a little over a year that we lived as neighbors. And I would be scared to guess how many hours we spent, especially me and Steve, and our wife saying, guys, come inside. It's midnight. Us just sitting out there talking, a lot in common. And so I don't want to get too deep into it because we want to throw it over them. But Steve is known as and I think I've got these in the right row, the baseball card kidney guy. Am I saying that right?
You are, yeah.
Okay. All right. So, go ahead.
Better than what some people call me.
I do have other names. But that's the one I'm going to go for. We're going to go with tonight.
Yeah, I had testicular cancer, so I get called way worse than that.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So you want to be stuck with the kidney guy. Absolutely. But so what I want to do is, basically You know what? I'm not even going to give a little teaser there. I just want them to tell the story. Steve, I'm going to throw it over to y'all and kind of let you tell the story, how y'all met. There's a lot to cover here. Don't know if we're going to get it all. We may end up doing 2 episodes, but I want it 3, 4, 5. We may just rebrand our podcast for you guys. But I want to throw it over to y'all. You know, introduce yourself and tell our listeners the beautiful story that y'all have lived.
All right. Well,
First of all, guest and co-guest.
Yes.
I love dominance here.
I love it.
David,
Support this.
Sorry, I'll let our co-guest for us.
you know, it's listening to you tell that story about when we first met. A lot of that clicked, except I think we walked away from that conversation feeling differently. I walked across the street and was like, that guy's never going to talk to me again. If I had to guess, he'd probably move in about 15 months.
That's hilarious. We're like, all right, stop unpacking the boxes. We're out of here.
But, I did want to start with that thing, Matt. That was one of the greatest, like, you guys are great neighbors. And to be able to talk like that, you know, in the driveway and for our kids to get along. And, you know, we actually still have a video where we're talking in the middle of a thunderstorm and you were walking back across the street to your house. And when you get to your door, lightning strikes like a tree behind your house and you just jump like a little girl or something.
Absolutely. No shame here.
I'll need you to send me that as soon as this is over. Thank you.
But no, to start it off, back in 2003, I had graduated from Oak Ridge High School, and I had signed to play basketball at Maryville College, which is a Division III school right outside of Knoxville. And I had moved into my dorm, had started practice, fall conditioning, all of that, and we were about 3 weeks, if even, it may have been 2 weeks, from our first game. So me realizing that dream of wanting to play college basketball was, you know, was right there. And we had our preseason physical, and I made it all the way through to the last test, which is the easiest, the blood pressure test. You know, I'm 6'2", at the time, 180-pound athletic guy. Well, I kept failing that test. It kept coming back like 180 over 125, which was ridiculously high. Yeah. And so they sent me to a nephrologist. Next thing I know, they tell me I have 50% kidney function and that I have chronic kidney disease and I'm not going to be able to play because of the high blood pressure. So just like that, it already wiped away something I spent my entire life working towards. So me and kidney disease start off on the best of, you know, feet. They were like, wasn't there, but I ended up transferring from Maryville College because I couldn't be around the game. I couldn't be around my friends that intimately because it's such a small school and not be able to play. So I transferred to the University of Tennessee where I ended up working with Coach Summit, and she allowed me to try out to be one of the male practice players. She knew my story. She knew that I really wanted to keep playing, and I made it. And so that allowed me to continue playing. And as time went on, I eventually graduated in sports management. So I was working in sport business. I moved to Florida. I was working at Disney Sports. I was living the life. Like, life was going great. And then the disease started really poking its head up. I kept thinking I was breaking my toe. I couldn't figure out how. It's just I am so clumsy. My mom will tell you the I would wake up with a sore toe, and I'd be like, yeah, I probably did something. Like, not even
probably broke my toe again.
Like it's nothing.
Didn't stub it or anything.
And finally, I had left Disney. My internship was over. I was working for the Orlando Magic in the NBA, and I wake up one morning, my entire foot's swollen. And luckily, where the headquarters is for the Orlando Magic, the offices, there's a doctor's office on the floor below. So I go down there, and they tell me that I have what's called gout. And I had no idea what gout was. It made me feel like I wanted to cut my foot off. And I ended up moving back home to be closer to home, to be closer to doctors that I had known, my family. And the gout kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And eventually I realized I can't work in sports at the capacity I am because you have to be on your feet constantly. Right. Game days are 14 hours long. So I decided to go to MTSU, Middle Tennessee State, out in Murfreesboro, to get my master's. And so while I was doing that, at the end of my first semester, Okay. I was pulled into the office. I had a graduate assistantship in the ticket office. They were paying for everything. I get called into the office at the end after Christmas, and oh, by the way, we can't pay you anymore. We ran out of money.
Whoa.
And so at that point, I was like, okay, I'm seeing where in my life, if it could go wrong, it will. Yeah. And so I had a choice to make. Do I just give up and just figure out life somehow? Or do I say, you know what, I'm going to take out a loan. I'm going to finish what I started because I came here for a reason. And I felt like God was saying, no, stay. Do what you can to stay. So I made that decision. I filled out the 1,000-page FAFSA form, and they said, we'll give you $20,000 if you give us 60. And I said, okay.
Perfect deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still paying on it.
I was like, you got yourself a deal. But it worked out because I still was working with the athletic department. And about 2 months later, a buddy of mine came up to me who worked in marketing. He says, I need you to help me with the softball game. The Lady Blue Raiders softball game. We need somebody to help him with playing the music, the sound effects, and announcing the batters that are coming up, which was a terrible idea on his part because me and him, his name was Ron, we had the exact same sense of humor. And I cannot tell you how many times the head coach called from the dugout and said, stop playing the ESPN theme song. And we're like, it was bad. But while I was doing this, in the corner of my eye, there was this girl who had walked in, and I remember she had her overalls on, and just real cute looking. And she was there to visit her boyfriend, who was a complete geek. Like,
Of course.
Like, she'll take this guy, dorkier. And so my friend was like, hey, man, that girl keeps looking. Man, she keeps watching and laughing at everything you say. And eventually one thing led to another. He introduced me to her, which was a mistake on his part.
Obviously.
It was fate. And I like to look back at that moment and I think, my goodness, when he introduced me to Heather and said, Steve, this is Heather. Heather, this is Steve. When we shook hands that first time, that was God going, click. All right, that connection's happened. I've waited 26 years, Steve, for you to make that connection. Now we're going to go this direction. And it gives me chills when I think about that.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Right, that not only did I just shake the hand of my future wife, but the person who was going to save my life. Because the day we met, I had gone to the doctor, and they said my kidney function had gotten worse. So I was telling my friend I was nervous about it. So,
Yeah, I remember being in that, press box, laughing at what he was saying, because my boyfriend at the time he was a jerk, and he was telling me, yeah, you can come. He was doing the radio announcing, so he said you can go in there, but you better not talk, be quiet, all this stuff. So I was like, okay,
which goes over great.
I laughed the whole time because
right.
Well. And I was like, this guy's hilarious. And I had heard him talking to his friend Ron about how he had a doctor's appointment. And I was like, and it sounded serious. I didn't get all of it, but I was like, man, this guy is so positive and hilarious and just so fun loving. And he's going through something. But I was like, he's funny. Well, just to kind of cover my butt, because I've never cheated on anyone in my life. That guy ended up cheating on me, and I updated my Facebook status as you do, and Steve very smoothly, I want to say within the minute of
slid into the DMs there.
sent me a little message, hey, it was nice meeting you.
Smooth, bro.
And then he said, I'd love to go on a double date with you if I can ever find a girl to go out with me, knowing that I'm freshly single. So he's just feeling it out. And I was like, well, I'd love to go on a double date with you, but I also have to find a date, and the rest is history.
So, which real quick, let's just offer some hope to the guys who are listening. What we just heard
including
is that
her ex-boyfriend, who may or may not be listening right now.
Let's just make it very known that humor trumps looks every time, right?
Wow, was that a cheap shot?
He made her laugh, and it didn't matter. For those watching the video, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So.
Because had I shown a picture of her of what I was going to look like in 10 years, would my funny still outweigh my looks?
Absolutely.
So, okay. So let's get back on track here.
Sorry.
So we did start dating, and you know, I had just been cheated on. He had gotten out of a bad relationship, and we had not really been thinking about getting in another relationship, but it just kind of fell into our laps, and I just felt so comfortable with Steve, and he ended up graduating before me. I was getting my undergrad as he was getting his master's, and moved back to Knoxville, Tennessee to work at UT Athletics. And one night we were calling each other, you know, having a phone date, because Knoxville to Murfreesboro, we couldn't all do it every weekend. We'd meet halfway sometimes, but we'd have a lot of phone dates because we were poor students, just graduated. And so we were talking, and I just had this feeling that I needed to share about my faith with Steve. I was like, you know what, we're kind of getting serious. I want to feel this guy out. Is this something that's going to be long term? So I talked to him about my relationship with God, and particularly a conversation I had with God when I was in my early teens. So I told Steve, I started praying for my husband when I was 13 years old.
Wow. That's awesome.
He needed a lot of prayer.
Should have been a sign right there.
I was about to say, definitely, the Lord definitely knew what he was doing there.
The Lord knew. And so I told him, I said, during one of these prayers, I was talking with God, and I just got this terrible feeling that my husband was dying. And I'm 14 at the time. I'm like, this makes no sense. I'm 14. I know the guys I've met are not going to be my husband. Like, I have not met this guy yet. How could my husband be dying if I haven't met him? And so it really upset me. And so I just started praying, and I said, God, you know, I want to take on his pain. I don't want him to be in pain any longer. I want you to help him to live. And immediately I felt this excruciating pain in my abdomen. And I just kept praying through the pain, and eventually it went away. And I had never shared that with anybody until I was on the phone with Steve, because it's such a weird moment. And as I was sharing it with him, I'm like, he is so silent on the other end of the phone. He thinks I'm crazy. This is the relationship. God, she feels weird things. And instead, he just starts asking me these questions really quick. Wait, how old were you? Around what time was this of the year? And just really like inquisitive. And I was like, well, it was around Christmas time when I was 14. And I was like, you know, why are you asking? And so he responded.
I remember my jaw dropped. And the reason I kept asking her all those things like, well, when was it and this and that, that's what people who work with computers call filtering, to find out if I was the person she was praying for. And as it happens, I said to her, I said, have I ever told you I have kidney disease? Because that's not something that you should open with on your first date.
Right.
And she said, no, you haven't. So I began telling her, you know, a lot of what I've told you guys when I was diagnosed and things like that. But I said, when I was diagnosed, they sent me to the hospital to have a biopsy done. And they just wanted to see what kind of disease was causing the problems. What was attacking my kidneys? Okay. They kept saying it was routine, but I was nervous because it entailed you sticking a needle into my organ without me being. So I was really nervous, and I was 18. So they did that. They started working on it, and I remember I just like started screaming, and I was like, "Can you please stop?" And they're like, "Okay, we'll stop, because you're 18, you can tell us to." And they said, "What's wrong?" I was like, "I don't know. It just hurt really bad." And so then they put me back in my room. My parents were there, and after a little bit, my parents, I feel guilty when people are there at the hospital when I am. So I was like, go get some lunch, get out of the room, things like that. And they did, and then this excruciating pain hit. And it was a scream. Like, it's probably a scream that I've never had since in regards to pain. And so the nurse comes running in. She calls the guy who did the operation. He comes running in and just starts feeling on my body and says, we got to get you downstairs. So they rush me downstairs, and I have no idea what's going on. I have a CT scan. They take me out of the CT scan. They say, you have a severe internal bleed getting into your lungs and your stomach. We're going to have to operate. Basically, you're going to die. So I remember I started getting very woozy and nauseated. And I remember I kind of woke up, and they were rushing me down the hall. And I remember, I think it was my mom, had one of the throw-up hands, and I was throwing up into it. Apparently, when they were coming back to see me, they saw me being rushed by.
No.
And, wait a minute. So they came following. Yeah. And they took me into the operating room, and I don't remember much after that. I wake up hours later, and so the doctor is standing there, and he goes, son, I don't know what your beliefs are. I don't know any of that about you, but I want to tell you something. Somebody is looking out for you upstairs. And I said, well, what happened? Because it was all a blur. And he said, well, that was a very, very severe internal bleed. So what I had to do is I had to go in, and I was going to have to clot that bleed so it didn't kill you. He said it was the most severe bleed I had seen, and before I could even get to the clot, it stopped like that. He said it was a miracle. I've never seen it before. And that was December 19th, 2003. And that was right when she was praying. And she and I
That's crazy, right?
That's crazy.
Love it.
So I guess we're getting married.
Right. Like, so let's set a date.
it was just meant to be. And a lot of, I don't even know.
From that point, and I know that she and I both, after we figured that out, we're like, huh.
Yeah.
Well, this is kind of awkward. Like, that's pretty big, what we just said.
Heavy.
And I was nervous about it because I didn't want her to leave me or to distance herself because of my disease. And she did quite the opposite. What I didn't realize was she was going now to find out how to get tested to donate to me. This was before we were even engaged. Because she said something told her, I want to help this man. Whether he's my husband or not, I want to help this man if I can. And it turns out she found out we were the same blood type. And I didn't know any of that was going on. Mm-hmm. And of course, as time went on, we got engaged. She said yes. We got married. She said yes again. And I was 3. Yeah. And then you fast forward to 2017, and I'm bypassing all that, but that's okay. I find out that I'm sick enough where I qualify for a transplant. I had been on dialysis for about a year at that point, actually. Mm-hmm. And it was miserable. Being on dialysis in the center is awful. I'll tell you. It's not fun. It's miserable. It's draining. You're sitting there watching people around you hanging on by a thread because that machine's turned on. And so you have a lot of, especially as so young, you have a lot of looking into what you think is your future moments. And that freaks you out because you see somebody who's, 70 years old and the man's literally dying and he's begging God to take him. I heard that multiple times. Mm-hmm. Patients out loud just saying, God, please go ahead and take me. I don't want this machine anymore. Mm-hmm. And that gets to you. Like, I don't care how strong-willed you are. I don't care how mentally tough you are. Yeah. That will get you.
Absolutely.
And I visited. So when sometimes I would have to take Steve to dialysis because his he'd have, his blood pressure would bottom out. He'd need someone to drive him home. And they did make an exception a couple times to let me back with him, but for the most part, they don't allow anybody into the room where they dialyze the patients. So I would sit in the waiting room and watch these dialysis patients pass each other and, say, I hope to see you tomorrow. And what they meant was, if you're live tomorrow, I'll see you. And it was just very, very...
I can't imagine.
Sobering. And so he wasn't on dialysis for very long before I realized this is not the life that I want my husband to live. He didn't want to live anymore. It it was miserable and it was depressing. And so I told him, I said, all right, you got a doctor's appointment with your nephrologist. I'm going with you, and I'm going to see what we have to do to get you a transplant. And
I noticed there were no questions asked there. It was statements.
Yeah.
I'm not a very assertive person, but I was like, when it comes to my family, something is going to be done, and it's going to be. And
my cancer doctors know my wife way better than they know me.
That's exactly right.
So, and like he said, when we were dating, right after that phone conversation about that prayer that I had when I was 14 years old, he said, I'm just going to lay it out there for you. Eventually, I'm going to need a transplant or to be put on dialysis. Basically, do you want to be with me anymore? And it was not like a guilt trip. It was just like, this is a decision you have to make. Like, it's going to be hard. And so as soon as I got off the phone with him, I Googled girl donates kidney to boyfriend. And I was like, surely there's another crazy girl out there like myself that donated a kidney to her boyfriend. And I found the story of this girl named Liz, and she donated to her boyfriend, Matt. And it was several years ago, and I was reading the article, and I found her on Facebook, and I chatted with this girl for years, on and off, just about, he's starting dialysis, like, it's getting harder, like, we're married, and the whole time I got to see her journey of them getting married and having a child, and his health was wonderful. And so it was just a huge, incredible, just encouragement to me, and a huge reason why I'm an advocate for living donors. And I, even though I'm such a private person, share my story, because I tell everyone the reason I share my story is because I want to be Liz for somebody else like me.
Absolutely.
Wow.
That's powerful.
Yeah, because had I not known someone went before me, it would have been harder, because I hadn't had a surgery prior to donating to Steve. I had my wisdom teeth out, and that's it. So medical stuff was foreign to me as far as my body went. And so that's a big deal.
Absolutely.
And being able to talk to someone and learn from someone, I knew right after talking with her, like, I Googled girl donates a kidney to boyfriend. Like, that was my plan as soon as I knew he would need a kidney. So that was 7 years before I got tested.
Wow.
And I went to his doctor's appointment, and he said, well, you're sick, but according to the insurance company, you're not sick enough to be on the transplant list. And I said, well, what if what if there was this kidney that's not on the list? What if he's not taking a kidney from someone else? What if he has a living donor? And what if that living donor is his wife, and she's ready to get tested right now?
Yeah.
Well, he said, well, here in Knoxville, UT Hospital, we don't do a lot of, like, preemptive transplants. But I did my residency at Vanderbilt, and they're kind of a little bit more, cutting edge with their transplants. So let me reach out to them, and basically I'll get back to you really quick, because he knew I was going to pester him.
Yeah, he could feel it.
Done. And the people at Vanderbilt said that I was the quickest that they had ever had anyone go through all the testing, because I had to go for 2 full days of testing, but before that, tons of blood work. I had to get my annual physical. I had to get an updated PAP, like all of these tests.
This was a long process.
And yeah, sometimes it can take a year, 2 years to get everything lined up and matched. And I was on it. So from, when we first talked to your doctor to when we found out the results, it was just, like 3 months?
Yeah.
Yeah, like 3 months. And
because I found out that Vanderbilt was going to take me on
yeah.
to see about the transplant on my birthday. And
I was actually approved to be a living donor before he was approved to be on the list. That's how quick.
That's how quickly she did
That's
it.
how quickly.
Wow.
Yeah. And in the moment, I'm very impatient. Steve's very impatient. It felt like it was taking forever. Like, I was so anxious. And so the first step was blood matching. And it's not just blood type, because we both are O positive. We knew that. So that was like a good, like, okay, at least we've like knocked off the first match thing. But they look for a lot of different things in the blood to make sure that his body won't reject mine. And so that's the first step. And so that's where our story kind of starts as far as our baseball card story. So I did the blood test, and that week I was very, very nervous because for 7 years I had watched my husband's health deteriorate. And for 7 years, I knew in my heart, I'm going to donate a kidney to my husband.
Yeah.
And everything was coming down to a call that I was going to get from my donor coordinator saying, you are a match or you are not a match.
Right.
And it scared me to death, because if I got a call and said, you're not a match, I felt like I was wrong, or like, how could I have felt this so strongly for so long? And it scared me to death, because I'm like, well, then what? And I just felt like the hopeless despair that could happen. And I was praying one day while I was waiting for those results, because it'd take about a week to get the results back. And I just kind of had this realization. I was like, I felt this for 7 years that I'm going to be a match. And I've got 7 days, to wait to see if I am. Instead of thinking, what if it's not going to happen? What if I just focus on, no, this is going to happen. Just
preparing for it, right? Yeah.
And so I said, you know what? I'm going to prepare how I'm going to tell him I'm a match, because I am a match. And I was like, I'm just going to have incredible faith. And so I was racking my brain, like, how can I make this special for Steve? Because he had told me, he said, please don't send me a text when you find out you're a match. Like, personal, because he was a nervous wreck. I was a nervous wreck. I had my phone on my desk at work every... What day was it? Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, he was at dialysis. And so Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Sorry, you're
Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so
he's used to saying that.
I was going to say, that came right out.
I was on my desk those mornings, because I would sometimes get a call that he was being rushed to the ER because something bad happened. Or he sent me a text, and his nurse was so pissed off at him because he sent me a picture. Something went wrong, and there was a lot of blood. I'm a woman, so it doesn't really bother me, but it was just it was a lot of blood. And he sends me a text, and he's like, I'm bleeding out. And said, you did not just send her that text message. So upset. So upset.
It wasn't a lot of blood. It just looked like it.
It just
Well, I was like, and it happened more than once, by the way. It's not like one of those things where I learned my lesson. And she was worried about me. Well, at dialysis, the biggest problem you can have, there's 2 things that can happen. 1, your blood pressure plummets and you black out. Or 2, when they take the needles out,
it doesn't clot.
You don't clot. And I had both of those issues at times. Well, when my blood pressure would drop, I could tell it was happening. Mm-hmm. Like all of a sudden I'd get woozy, and I would like start calling for the nurse, and that's the last thing I remember.
And his nurse would call it boarding the Jesus train. She said, you tried boarding the Jesus train again.
Oh my gosh.
My joke.
Well, it's funny you said it looked like a lot of blood, but it really wasn't. Honestly, that's a relative term. It depends on if it's my blood or your blood, if it's a lot or not.
Because I'd come back too, and all these nurses were staring at me, slapping my face. And then there was the one who, she was amazing. She was one of those straight shooters. She's like, "There you go again, trying to jump on the Jesus bus." And I would just start
I love it.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
I was like, "Pick me up today." So we're laughing, and she's like mortified. And so, back to when she's being tested that week. We were foster parents during all of this.
Yeah.
Okay. So we became foster parents in 2016.
Yeah.
Just throw that in there.
Yeah, just a little detail.
Yeah.
A little small detail. Because life wasn't crazy enough. We wanted to add to that.
Literally the month after we got our first placement, which was 2 sisters, 7-year-old and 9-year-old sisters. A month after is when he started dialysis. We didn't know when it was going to happen, and it was very sudden, and it was, like he said, not enough crazy. And so we've had 3 foster placements of siblings each time, of 2 kids each, and it's been the biggest blessing. I think they've had a bigger impact on us than even we've had on them. But
and the point I was wanting to make with the foster kids right now is, while I was going through dialysis, couldn't work. I even went into septic shock one day where I think I was going to make it overnight because I went septic into septic shock. And while I'm doing all of that fun, she has a full-time job. She's taking care of 2 foster children she's just met. She's still doing everything she can for the family, being the breadwinner, still going to church, still volunteering her time. Like, I'm telling you, she is a rock. Like, she's the most incredible woman I have ever met. And she was handling it all. And not one time to my face or anybody's face did she complain. Not one time did she ask for anything. Did she complain? It was just the most remarkable thing. Yeah. And that's why I wanted to talk about, the fostering, because that's another layer to our story that a lot of people don't know, who don't really know us. And so we had actually, it was a Thursday. I had texted her. I said, "Did you hear from Vanderbilt?" And she said, "No. They told me, well, yes, but you won't know until next Monday." And so I was like, I didn't want to wait through the weekend. And then all of a sudden she started acting a little funny because how your significant other communicates.
Oh, yeah.
I felt guilty for lying.
Like, you even know how they text. Like, she doesn't use emojis, really. She definitely doesn't use exclamation marks and all that. You notice that about somebody. Yeah. And she started being like, "Hey, go get your haircut at Sport Clips and go get the MVP and do this and that," like all excited. And I was like, "Well, why is she so excited?"
Because I felt guilty that I knew, and I stress-free, and he was over there still worrying. So what happened was, I knew that I wanted to figure out a way to tell Steve. And I thought about our times at the hospital where, we spent a lot of time at the hospitals. And our church family, our neighbors, our community was so incredible because we were trying to, keep up with paying the bills while taking care of these awesome kiddos and while trying to manage Steve's health. And so, they really stepped up and helped us with our kiddos. And we spent a lot of time in the hospitals. And there was one time in particular where Steve was he's having a really hard time, just like, is this our life? I hate that I can't, just feeling so guilty. I hate that I can't take you on a vacation right now. And you're using all of your vacation days laying on a cot in a hospital room with me.
Yeah.
You're the love of my life. I don't care if we're in Hawaii or at UT Medical. This is where I want to be, right beside you. And so just to kind of cheer him up, I asked him, what was something you enjoyed as a kid? We're just, we used to play a game while we were dating, factoids about each other. Tell me something that you did as a kid that you enjoyed. And he said, and he immediately lit up and said, "I love baseball cards." And he told me about, it was something fun that he did with his dad. And I was like, "Well, tell me about that hobby." And so from then on, whenever we were at the hospital, which was a lot, we would open baseball cards just to kind of lighten the mood, and it was something to talk to the nurses about. And
Yeah.
so while I was thinking about it, I was like, how can I wrap baseball cards into this? Because that's been a part of our journey. And so I was like, well, and I'm like not a creative person. Like if you look at Pinterest, there's the like really beautiful Pinterest stuff, and then there's Pinterest fails. Like I'm the Pinterest so I was like, maybe I can make a custom baseball card. And I was like, it'll just look like a wonky, like, it's just going to be a wallet photo. That's what it's going to be. And he's going to be like, why is there a wallet photo of me in a pack of baseball? So I Google and I'm like, oh, Topps, they do custom baseball cards. I can order it from the site. And I'm like, oh, it takes 5 to 7 business days to come to me. And I'll know by then, but I was like, you know what, I'll just go ahead and order it. And I had it so that it would ship to my work. So if I end up not being a match, that he didn't know about it, because I was like, that would be depressing. He gets, something comes in the mail for Topps, he's going to open it, whether it has my name on it or not.
Oh, yeah.
He can't come to our house. He's like, that's a typo. So I ordered this card, and on the back of it, I just have a bunch of baseball puns telling him that I'm a match, and that we're going to hit it out of the ballpark together. And it has his name and rookie recipient as his position. And so I order it, and then I get the call a couple days later, and I go into the hallway at work. She tells me I'm a match. I'm bawling my eyes out. I come back to my desk, like trying to act cool because I want him to be the first person I tell. And then I'm like, well, I can't wait on this dang card to be mailed. No, like, I'm terrible at lying. And so I email Topps, and I'm like, this is a very weird story, but I need this card right now. And I'm thinking the best they can do is overnight it to me, and that's still too long to wait.
Yeah.
And said, well, let me see what I can do. Let's see where it's in the production line. And she gets back to me, and she said, here's the proof of the card. So she sends me the front and the back, and so I printed it off at work, and I'm like, I'll just like glue it to like a piece of cardboard and put it in a pack. I was
Figure it out.
Figure it out. Something will happen. And so we had foster parent training class that night. So I drive to meet him and the kids. And so we're doing our training class. They ask me, hey, have you heard anything? No, I haven't heard anything yet. So we're driving separately home, and I tell him, stop by and get some baseball cards on the way home. And he's like, this has been a weird day. She told me to, get the expensive haircut, get the baseball cards, like whatever. Okay. And so we get home, and he goes back into the bedroom, and I open up one of the baseball packs real quick and stick in the card I made for him that I had glued to a piece of cardboard. And he comes out, and he's like, why'd you open my cards?
Like you have crossed the line.
Well, and we would always kind of make a competition out of it. So like we would like split the cards up, and whoever did better, like we'd make bets and stuff. And so I was like, I just got really excited. I think that there's a hit in this pack. And so I'm like, let's get the babies to bed, because we had 2 foster kids, a 2-year-old and a newborn at the time. And I had so much adrenaline going. The kids like could sense it, and they would not go to bed for me. And so I'm I'm losing it. I'm like, I can't wait. And Steve's like, what is, like, I'm usually the calmest person in the world. And he's like, I'll put the kids to bed. Like, you need to chill.
AKA, I opened their doors and said, hush.
Yes. Close the door. Ignore them. That's my style.
So they're still whining a little bit, and I'm like, well, let's just go open these cards on the front porch, and I'll let Steve take it from there.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: if you can't hear them, they're not a problem. That's my philosophy with kids. Get out of earshot, they're good.
It's the whole if a tree falls in the wood kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I didn't hear any of that.
And so, yeah, the day had been odd. I can kind of tell something maybe was up. When I went to the Sport Clips to get my hair cut and I got the MVP, the girl was like washing my hair and this and that. And she was like, what brings you in today? And I says, I don't really know. My wife told me I could. So,
So here I am.
usually that's a Christmas gift. She's like, yeah, go MVP. And I told her, I was like, I have a feeling I may be getting a new kidney tonight. And of course, she's just like, what are you talking about? Like, nobody's ever said when I was washing their hair. And I said, I don't know. I was like, I think I have a feeling she's going to like take me to Chili's. We're going to get some chips and salsa and she's going to lay it on me. And so.
Which would have been a dream come true. That's like his favorite place to eat. So that would have been,
You can't go wrong with Chili's.
Yeah.
been like a step above the baseball card for him.
But not as cool as the baseball card. So I go out about my day, and when she tells me to go get baseball cards, that was the second time. I was like, wait, that's odd.
Yeah.
Again, something she never tells me to do. And so I come home, and like she said, we go on the porch, and so I just started going through. I mean, you can see me because at the very beginning of the video, you can hear her say, okay, we're back. What had happened was she started filming me doing it inside. The babies were being,
Babies.
And so he goes, let's restart it outside. So people have asked me, why did she say, okay, we're back?
Yeah.
And I say, well, that's why. So
Take two.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going through the cards, Mike Trout, Clint Frazier, all of that. And then I see the card with me. And even though I suspected something was happening that day, it didn't matter. When I saw that card, it took like 2 or 3 seconds. And you can see me just kind of looking at it. And it hit me when I saw it. Because she kept saying, well, turn it on its back. Turn it over. What's on the back? What's on the back? The reason it took me a few seconds to do that was because it hit me.
Yeah.
And I was starting to process. And
Yeah.
so I flipped it over, and then when I got to the line, you're going to be a rookie recipient at Vanderbilt Transplant, then you guys just see me bawl.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, it hit me that for 14 years, I had been miserable with that stupid disease. I thought I was going to be a sick person my whole life. Dialysis was my future. I was never going to be a good husband, to be a good foster dad. And so I had anger, sadness, happiness, all coming out at once.
Yeah.
And that's what you see in the video. And to be quite honest, I don't remember much after that.
Yeah.
She was filming, and I do remember saying, so you want to save my life? Like, I was in disbelief.
Yeah.
And I asked her, and she just started crying. I was like, yes, I want to do this. And the reason it was so emotional is because of the stories we just told you. It all hit. I was like, it was almost like God was sitting there, his hands on my shoulders going, it's okay, cry it out. Like,
Oh, man.
just cry it out, buddy. I know exactly what you're feeling. I knew you were going to feel this way, and I knew this was going to happen. And I was like, I can't believe it. She's the one. She's the one who had that prayer. She's the one who was there for me every single time I was in the hospital. She's the one that did this and that. She's the one that when I went into septic shock and they didn't think I was going to make it, climbed in my bed in the ICU and sang our song to me. My vitals jumped the next day. It was her all along. She was my guardian angel this whole time. And she was standing right next to me every single day. Every night I was saying good night and good morning to my guardian angel, and I had no idea. And I preach that. I say that. I'm like, you never see what God's doing at the time. So many times. God is one of those things that you appreciate, unfortunately, in a rearview mirror, where you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, that's why that happened. That's why this, that's why that. And that's why I was bawling. And, you see a lot of trolls on the internet they say this stuff to me all the time. Well, he doesn't deserve it. He didn't kiss her right away. He didn't say he loved her. That's what was going through my head. So for anybody that's watching and just thought that, I was in my own world of disbelief. And I could not believe it. I still can't believe it when I think about it. And so after she turned the camera off, of course, I just hugged her. And right there on our swing that you know of, Matt, and just hugged. We stood up. That song that she sang to me, our song is called Everything by Michael Bublé. And we played that whenever something really special happened. So we danced to that song after she said she was a match.
That's awesome.
We danced to that song before we went to the hospital for our transplant. it's just a very important part of our relationship. And so we came in and she told her mom. I called my parents. They were in Atlanta at the time and told them. And we came inside and it was just like
we were like
what happened?
Emotionally exhausted.
I'm sure.
What
We
just
had
happened?
so much anxiety that whole week, and it was just like a dump of emotion on our front porch. We were both bawling. And I had filmed that moment as a memory for Steve and I. Like I said before, I'm a very private person, and everyone who's interviewed me has laughed at me for saying that.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
But we had a discussion that night on the couch when we came in, and I was like, well, I mean, our church friends, neighbors, family members, friends, like all these people had been praying for us. They knew I was getting tested. They knew Steve had been in and out of the hospital and was on dialysis. And I was like, well, I mean, we could share the video with them so that, So, I mean, I didn't edit that video at all. Like, it wasn't planned to be shared with anybody. I literally was like, maybe they want to see this. Maybe, like, I don't know. So we put it on my Facebook. I had, not very many friends.
150.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, not very many friends. And we went to bed. And we were so exhausted.
We walked back in, we're like, well, good night.
Yeah, we'll deal with this tomorrow. And we were just so exhausted. And so the next day, a friend invited us out to lunch with her and her special needs son. And their place was Olive Garden. They love going to Olive Garden. So we met them at Olive Garden, and we had a bunch of notifications. Like, we knew that a lot of people had seen the video. We didn't really kind of know the extent until Steve looked at his phone weird, and he got up from the table. He's like, sorry, I don't know this number, but I'm going to take this call, which usually we don't answer a phone if we don't know the number. But he stepped away and took the call, and he came back and he said, that was Good Morning America. And I just looked at him. I was like, Good Morning.
Okay.
Like ABC, Good Morning America. I said, somebody's pranking you. Like, I didn't believe it. He's like, they want to do a Skype interview with us today. And at the time, we didn't have a laptop at our house.
It worked.
Yeah, we didn't have a working laptop. All our money was going to medical bills. So we had we couldn't Skype with him. We're like,
Because I remember when he had called, I had asked him, because he said, we would love for you two to be on Good Morning America. And I remember I said, what for?
Wait, what?
He's like, you tell me.
Ow! Where do you see it?
I said, how did you see it? We just did that last night. And he goes, social media. He goes, have you not been on social media? And I said, not really. He's like, it went viral, major viral overnight.
Steve was like, I've been getting a lot of notifications, so I just kind of turned my phone off.
I
love it.
crazy, dude.
So we went back to the neighborhood, went to a neighbor, and they let us borrow their Mac. So there we are the next day getting ready, okay, we're going on Good Morning America. This doesn't make sense. It was just all so quick.
Yeah.
And so we did Good Morning America. It aired the next day, and then that's when it kind of really blew up. Major League Baseball reached out fairly quickly and did an interview, and then from there it just kept growing and growing. And as of today, it's been seen about 500 million times. Over
500 million.
Dude, that's crazy.
With a B.
And that's over all platforms.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's been seen in so many countries too.
yeah, that's what blew our mind is if you can go on Google and they have articles about us, and the only reason I know it's about us is because the only thing in English is our name. And so I was like, oh yeah, this is about us.
Hey, it's us.
Our picture,
And I mean, we've gotten messages, articles, and stuff from Australia, Germany, Spain, Indonesia, Vietnam, Russia. I mean, you name it. They're
crazy.
sharing our story. And so I look at her and I say, how?
Mm-hmm.
more importantly, why? Because when this first started going viral, we had to make a choice. Blown up. The media was annoying us like no other. They find you.
Because
They find you. And we're just Matt, you know us.
we're
Like,
just private people that, walk across the street to our neighbors
Right.
and just like shoot the breeze. Like,
and go to Cracker Barrel and Walmart and call it a date.
yeah.
Absolutely.
It's not.
And so
Throw a fun fact in here real quick. Since we moved, me and Steve have stayed in contact. But we had this weird sixth sense where we would always meet at the bacon section of Walmart. What was it? 3 different times, Steve, we ran into each other
yeah, I'd
in
be
front
sitting
of
there.
the bacon at Walmart.
Seems appropriate.
I am not surprised at all.
we congregated at bacon Walmart.
Not
so
surprised.
so we had an option. We had you either turn our phones off or we figure out what to do with that. And so we finally came to this conclusion, well, maybe God wants us to use this to help others.
Yeah.
And when we came to that conclusion, we're like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
As long as we can control the message and things like that, we knew what they wanted to talk about, the video, but we also wanted to make sure that we gave credit to who deserved credit, which was God. If it wasn't for him, none of this would even be.
Yeah.
Like, it would be a shame to talk about our story on national television and not mention the writer of this book, And we ran into some different times where they didn't want us to. I can't remember. I wouldn't say who it was anyway.
Yeah, it was a written article that someone was doing on us, and Steve answered some questions, and they were like, "This is really good stuff, but just based on our readers and stuff, we may want to edit God out." And
I remember I was like, okay, find another writer.
I mean,
Wow.
Yeah.
You're telling me to share my story, and then you're telling me,
Yeah.
like, which is it?
Yeah.
And most people were fine with it. I'm happy to say that only happened a couple times.
yeah.
Right.
And so when it started going viral, to this day, that still weirds us out. We still don't understand why. I remember I was at work and I got an email from ESPN, and it was a producer for SportsCenter, and she said, "We would love to have you two on prime time in the morning during SportsCenter." And I was so excited because, that's a dream.
Yes, this is the big one.
That's the dream, right?
I finally made it. Like, whether it be I'm great at basketball or I'm a phenomenal crier in a video, I'm going to be on SportsCenter.
Who cares about Good Morning America? It's SportsCenter time.
And I grew up, my dad had it on TV every morning.
Absolutely.
And those guys. And I didn't even ask her if it was okay. I just said yes. Like, all right, I will be sitting
This is
there.
happening.
And so they set it up at UT athletic department in the studio where they do the football shows and all of that, the IMG studio. And we were sitting there, and this was maybe 2 weeks? No, a week and a half after. So we're sitting there in these two chairs, and they had this massive camera right in our face, okay? And we couldn't see the person. They just put the stuff in our ears so we could hear him and how the show was going and all that. So they give me my earpiece, they give her earpiece, they put it in a cell phone, they dial a number. We can hear the show. We just can't see him. And so I'm sitting there just kind of like bobbing my head, like waiting for this to go. And all of a sudden, Heather starts answering questions. And I can't hear anything.
Oh, no.
He's like lottie-dottieing over here. He can't hear him. And so I'm like, and so, I sound like a moron. I'm like, Steve, he wants to know how you're feeling. And I'm like
I'm a 90-year-old. And I'm like,
and he realized, oh my gosh, I can't. It was.
So I kept trying to get the attention of the guy behind the camera, like,
Can't hear.
So finally they figured it out, and they went to commercial. They fixed it. They came back. And we learned after the fact that the gentleman who was interviewing us, for those of you that know your Superman history, is Christopher Reeve's son, Will.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, did not know that at the time. So it's going great. The interview's going great. We're talking about everything. We were asked to wear American Kidney Fund shirts on
Yeah.
the interview, which we obliged to because we
Right.
love working with them.
Yeah.
And so everything's going well. And then at the very end, Will says, "All right, Steve, before we let you all go this morning, can you tell us what your favorite baseball card is in your collection?" And I mean, it didn't take me a second. I just went boom, 1989 Upper Deck, King Griffey Jr. rookie card number 1. Right? And then so I'm sitting there, I'm like, and it's all on the interwebs.
This is great. The interweb.
On the interwebs. And so I'm sitting there like this, and then you can hear me say, "Well, that was a no-brainer." And dug myself even deeper.
You rattled it like Ralphie in A Christmas Story, rattling off that
Red Ryder BB gun.
all the specs on that card and everything, and he was so proud of himself. He knew everything about that card.
And she hits me, and then Will's cracking up, and as a guy, I'm like clueless, like that is a good card. Show some respect.
That's exactly right. Like, whoa. Y'all chill out. That is a good card.
It's a great.
Ken Griffey Jr. did not offer to donate a kidney to Steve.
That's exactly right.
He hangs up like it ends, and so we can still talk to Will. And Will goes, "Dude, I threw you a beach ball to hit a home run for your wife with, and you swung and missed." And I went, "Oh."
All of a sudden, you feel her reaching over for her kidney. I'll take that back.
Yeah, this was before the transplant.
And that's not the only time I put foot in mouth on national television. When we were on Harry Connick Jr.'s talk show the first time, we did a Skype interview.
Before we did one
transplant.
before the transplant and one 5 weeks after the transplant. He flew us to.
And so we're doing a Skype interview in front of his live studio audience. And I start telling him about that day that I just talked to you guys about, where she told me how it was a weird day. And so I said something. And I didn't mean for it to come out this way, because guys never actually mean to mess up. We just do. And I was like, "Well, Harry, she told me to go out and get my hair cut, get pampered, have a nice day," which she never does. And so...
Bro.
And that's on the interwebs too. I can show it to you, man.
You are killing me here on national
I
TV.
love it.
So they won't let me speak on TV anymore.
So they're all like, "So Heather."
Yeah. So that when she introduced herself as guest and co-guest,
That's what that meant.
she was thinking about all these times.
And there's only one person on this planet who has sided with me and told her to go easy on me, and that was WWE wrestler Kane, our mayor.
Mayor Jacobs.
Mayor Jacobs. When we met him, he had seen our video and knew who we were, which was crazy. And I told him that. He goes, "Oh, come on, Heather." He goes, "You can't put a guy on live television without a script and then punish him for saying something stupid."
He's like, "You know how many interviews I flubbed up?"
And at that point, you're looking up at Mayor Jacobs like, "Okay, that's fine. Okay."
Yeah, that'll work.
No one's gonna give you a hard time about messing up an interview.
That's right.
But yeah, it's been a blessing, guy. Like, we're so appreciative that you gave us this opportunity to come and laugh and spread the word and talk about God, tell our story. Like you had said, there's so much more that I want to tell you about, but it's just not enough time.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I will say congratulations. You're the first guest that have ever brought the host to tears. I think that's the first time we've ever cried on.
Yeah, we
got choked up.
We were just sitting here. He's like, "Okay, so we're crying together."
Here we are.
And I was like, "Dude, yes, we are. Holy cow!"
But it is. I mean, it's just amazing the journey, that the Lord started y'all on years before you even met.
Oh man, I mean, it was obviously the hand of God, and I really appreciate the back end of that story where it would have been easy to, especially with all that fame coming, just to make the story focused around you guys. But you said we're not going to edit God out of this.
Yeah.
And that's such an important part, man. I really appreciate you guys being grounded enough to say that it was his hand, that was able to make this happen. All the way back to age 14? That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's an unbelievable story.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We appreciate it so much. I wanted to share with you real quick, 2 days before we found out we were a match, We didn't know this at the time, kind of like a lot of other stories, but Steve was praying the same time I was praying in separate rooms of our house.
Yes.
We were both scared to death, not knowing if we would be a match or not. And I was begging God, like, I want to take this man's pain away. I mean, that same prayer that I prayed when I was 14, just feeling this overwhelming desire to help him.
Yeah.
And, Steve was in the other part of the house just praying to God, just,
Begging him.
just begging him for some relief. And honestly, I think that's why we went viral, because 2 days later, as private as I am, my inbox was filled with people literally all over the world saying, I'm praying for you.
Wow.
And having been in and out of the hospital, working full time, caring for these kids, just being emotionally, physically, mentally exhausted, knowing that there are people all around the world that care about us. It was just incredibly humbling. And we're just so incredibly grateful that God chose that as a way to show us that he hadn't forgotten us, because we were feeling forgotten, and God
Absolutely.
said no.
And one thing I add to that is, well, I'll add two things because this is my nature. So I was downstairs in the bedroom, and that's when I fell to my knees. And the point I want to make with that is, I had talked to God a lot, but not one time did I ever ask him anything. I complained to him. I asked questions like, why me? Why me? But not one time say, I need you. And so when I fell to my knees, I said, I need you. I need you. I need you. Please don't forget me. Please don't forget me. And then when 2 days later, I opened that baseball card on, he was like, there you go, son. I just needed you to say you need me.
Oh, man.
Wow.
And at first, she was upstairs praying. And I want to say that when I hear her praying, like, all I heard was, dear God, take away the pain. Some. I was like, those darn kids. Like, she's up there. So I got down on my knee and said, dear Lord, please protect those kids, because I'm about to.
I mean, we just kind of scratched the surface of our story, because, I mean, that was all before we were, like, really connected. And I mean, we've been connected all along. And I told him, I gave him my heart a long time ago. What's another organ?
Oh, man. Dude.
But
I'm going to go cry.
Yeah.
I'm going to go cry for a little bit.
I was being one.
Oh, yeah. Say that again.
She made a comment, and I can send you guys any links you want to see. Last year, Lori Tucker, who works for the local news station here, WD, she did a 2-year kidneyversary story on us last October. In 19. And
yeah, I said that when we had said our vows, when we got married, in sickness and in health till death do us part, that's when we became one. And so when I made that decision 7 years prior to getting tested that I was going to donate a kidney to him, that was just an extension of those vows. So I say all the time, like, I feel like anyone would do this for someone that they love, and they should do something. I mean, it's a hard decision, but if you love somebody, I mean, love conquers all. And so deciding to give him a kidney was just an extension of those vows that we were already one.
And what amazed me was the night before the transplant. We were in a hotel just outside Nashville, and I'm laying there. I am freaking out. I'm bugging out. Like, I am a total wreck. Why? Because I'm concerned for her.
Yeah.
I've been through the ringer enough with going to the septic shock. I've had more surgeries than I care to admit. I was worried about her.
Yeah.
And also the reason why I never asked her formally to give me her kidney. And she never asked me if it was okay. It was just, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And I knew better than to say no. So I look over at her, laying on the bed, has her leg crossed up on her legs up, watching her phone. And I said, what are you doing? Like, are you not nervous? And she's like, no. And I was like, why? Like, I'm like, I know one, and you're just giving me a piece of you, but like we're not splitting a peanut butter sandwich here.
This is a big deal.
This is a big deal. Like,
Well, and he asked me, he's like, I'm worried that you don't understand what you've agreed to because of how calm I was. And I honestly,
wait, where's the kidney?
I'm like, oh my gosh, they're gonna cut me open.
I thought I threw it up.
And I mean, I think it was just an accumulation of, this is what I wanted for so long, is for him to not be in pain. And so it was like, I think a lot of people, and I'm sure your wife can relate to this, Mason, is when someone that you love is hurting, you would do anything to switch places for them.
I told Matt this going through that. The cancer was way harder on my wife than it was on me, man. And I could tell that just by watching her. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's excruciating. And I know if the tables were turned, Steve would have felt the same way. And that's why he knew he couldn't fight me on it, because he didn't want me to donate. He didn't want me to put my life at risk. And I told him at one point, I said, this isn't a selfless thing I'm doing. This is selfish. And I kind of over-exaggerated the whole thing with, I'm going to the hospital too. I want a healthy husband.
Yeah.
It wasn't a chore for me to, be at the hospital, but I'm like, I'm going to benefit from having a healthy husband. Like, that's what I want more than anything, is for you to feel better for yourself.
Yeah.
So.
And I remember the one time I pushed back, she said this to me, and she said, if you were to not allow me to help you, and you were to die, do you really want to make me feel that way? Because if that happens, I'll kill you.
Well, there you go.
And I said, so if I die and you feel bad, you're going to kill me. I was like, well, dang, that's dying twice. So I was like,
That's pretty threatening.
and one of the, real quick, when she was doing the test to find out, you had to speak with a psychologist or a therapist to make sure you're in the right sense of mind. That you know what you're doing.
And you're not being manipulated or bribed or anything.
Because she was approved before I was, I'm in there in the meeting with her. When the coordinator looks at her and she goes, this is a very, very important thing that I need to know that you know your answer to. And she goes, right, that it can come up till right before they roll you back. You can change your mind, right? And so I turned and looked at her. I was like, yeah, Heather, did you know that? And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, she's donating to me.
She didn't know?
Yeah, she didn't realize that it was him I was
Yeah.
doing.
She's like, you can back out, right? I was like, what?
That's hilarious.
During the testing process, they almost it seems like they almost try to talk you out of it, because as doctors, you make an oath to do no harm. And this is what my surgeon told me was, I made an oath to do no harm, and I'm taking a healthy kidney out of a healthy patient.
Yeah.
So they really want to make sure that lifelong, like, it's not going to have a negative impact on your life. And I told them, the emotional and psychological benefit that my husband has a chance that he might have a better quality of life is so far above any physical pain that I might go through.
Yeah.
With surgery.
Yeah.
Well, that's it's amazing.
Yeah,
It's
bro.
amazing.
You got a good one on your hands, bro.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's a keeper.
Absolutely.
I didn't sign a prenup, so the kidney's still mine.
No matter what happens, you get to keep it.
Right.
Well, guys, thank you so much. And I know, like you said, Heather, we really did, even from what I know, just scratch the surface. As you were talking, I was thinking about, how much harder it would be to walk through with kids that, with your own kids, but then the special challenges of fostering kids and, everything. It's unbelievable what y'all have allowed yourselves while on this journey, still allowing God to use you to help those kids.
It's amazing.
And, you know, for those, you know, go follow, hopefully you're okay with this, but go follow Steve and Heather and see the journey they're on, because, you know, y'all just went out of town, spent some time with some of those foster kids that you had in your home. They're still very invested, and, you know, God's brought them through this journey. And, you know, Heather, you, as we're wrapping up, I'm trying to shut up, but, you know, you talked about that lady that you reached out to, and, you know, you've now gone viral, and you are that for so many people. And thank you for allowing yourself to be that, because that's a big deal. That's huge. That's huge. And, you know, the way God's using y'all, and I know me and Steve, you know, every few weeks we'll text and stuff, and the way the Lord's using y'all, you know, placing you as far as careers and still being able to be involved. It's just an amazing story. I wish we had multiple hours to go over it all, but thank you so much for your time tonight. This has been fantastic. I can't wait to get this out to our listeners.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome. Yeah, we do appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much for your time. Check them out, like Matt said. While you're checking them out, check us out too. Shameless plug for the podcast. If you like this episode, consider subscribing. If you're listening to the audio version, you can watch the video on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, you can watch or listen to the audio version anywhere podcasts are streaming. And you can check it all out at thecrushitteam.com. Till next time, guys.